So now I made all these. I scanned all these turtles, right? And what's something that I really loved about the scanner is that it scanned all of it at scale. Like when I brought it into the software, it was all scaled together. Like I didn't have to like resize any pieces. Like everything really came together nicely. Even the base pieces, like all these base, this base was done traditionally as well. And I scanned it. Um, it 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 was really nice to like put all these together and polish it and make it work. But the scale was right on. So yeah, props to 3D Maker Pro for that. So here's the here's the final sort of like decimated version of Leonardo, which this was after me polishing it. But I want to show you guys the raw scan of Leo, how it came. So this is the model itself. You could see that it still has the holes, right? It has that surface from the base that I scanned, and it needs sort of like a little bit of polishing, right? Like let me grab my pen here so you could see like all these floating bits here and there. Like all this had to be removed. So very easy, just by smoothing out the mesh and turning this into a Dynamesh. Really helps. So yeah, this is like very low res, so I gotta like crank that up a little bit. So Dynamesh. There you go. So Dynamesh will close the holes and also uh, help you sort of like get rid of this stuff. So just by redynamesh and like going in with like trim dynamic and polishing, and just also you can go ahead and use like select lasso and remove these pieces, and then go ahead and delete hidden. So I went little by little, just polishing these. I know this, I'm not trying to like do a ZBrush class here, but I'm just gonna show you like a little bit of how I polish this out. So basically, yeah, just removing the noise, and then afterwards, like for example, you can tell that the bandana and the edges still need some definition, right? Again, this is amazing what the scanner did already, which makes it really easy to just finish up the sculpture digitally. So I went in, like for example, with my brush, and I sharpened those edges to reinforce the bend the you know this that seam between the skin and the bandana of the turtle. Just very quickly went in and started polishing that up. So you could see immediately, yeah, it looks much more defined. And when you print it at scale, right, this is not going to be a huge sculpture, right? So once you, let's say I reduced these sculptures on the 3D print by like 20%. And it was at scale, they read just fine. I think we have a question here. So i3 Windows 11 Pro 16. Okay. I mean, it's not a bad laptop. I think uh, maybe try doing smaller scans. It might help, and then fusing them together. That could help. Yeah. I know. I'm like, I wish I knew like a bit more of like in like the tech wise. I'm just like, okay, I have a computer that's good, and that's it works. If I could maybe, I don't know, maybe give it some more firepower. I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, definitely like consider, that you're gonna need some good RAM. I think definitely processing power for when you're doing like this big of a scan with 5,000 plus frames. Um, so back to the turtle, right? This we have this scan, right? I went in and reinforced all these details as well. So for example, like masking, inverting the mask, and then going up to deformation and then upping up the contrast of that detail, right? You see, you went from we were there to here, right? So that helps a ton, right? Bring some of those details that were captured by the scanner, and just doing a general pass as well, just going to contrast, and then look at that. It just brings up all those details that you think that were a little bit lost, right? But you see, we were from here to here. Right? See how much defined that is? So just by upping the contrast slider, it really helps. Obviously, like you have to use it wisely, right? In some areas, it might not work, right? In some areas, it might just start deforming the sculpture a little bit too much, as you can tell, right? It's like, yeah, I don't think that's going to look right in the 3D print. So just use it wisely. I used it mostly in the shell, and I also up the contrast a bit of the pouches and the face, but that's pretty much it, just very moderately here and there. Let's see, let's go ahead and jump back to GM Studio. Let's see if this opened. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it did. So let's go. Okay, you can see now. Okay, great. So here is Raphael scan. Again, I didn't do any modifications whatsoever or tweaks in parameters. I just used it straight out of the box. Um, let's go ahead and check out the first hand scan. And let's go ahead and do the fusion, because the hand scan is a little noisy, right? So here's the fusion, right? And as you can see, there's a little bit more noise here. Surprisingly, this is a very symmetrical pose and standing as well, right? I I was expecting the scanner to have a much easier time on this one, but hey, we also have to consider like how we're moving the scan. We really need to have a steady hand as we're rotating the sculpture and scanning. So, for example, uh, I was scanning the feet, and you could see here like it did a copy of both, right? It's sort of like it was sort of like how can you say moved or shifted. It shifted the axis of the scanner, so it gave me that result. But it was no big deal. I quickly just made a second hand scan, and um, later on, I did the scan of the base. Let's see if I have it right here. And there you go. And I did a second scan of the turtle, and this time it captured the feet just fine, as you can see. And I also, as I'm scanning, I I make sure the scanner, like, give it enough time to scan one part. Like, for example, I leave it there to make sure that it's picking up the information and all the details, and I'm just holding the scanner and slowly rotating my object. So that helped. And also consider hi- highly reflective surfaces. Give the scanner a little bit of a hard time, because right, it's like trying to scan a mirror, right? You're not really gonna it's gonna shoot a bunch of light everywhere. The advantage about these sculptures is that they're made out of clay and they hardly reflect any light, so that helped me a ton. uh, they're very matte finish. So yes, so that's That's Raphael. So should we jump back? Let's go ahead and jump back to my C brush. There you go. Okay. Okay. 1 second, guys. I'll be right back. If there's any questions, I need to open the door. 1 second. I'll be right back.
Sure, take your time. Okay, guys, if you have any questions for George about 3D scanning and 3D polishing, feel free to pop them out in the
What do you
chat.
guys think of
The Raphael.
the scan? I mean, what do you think of it? And do you have any questions?
So, yeah. Hello?
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. We
Okay,
can hear
good.
you fine.
All right, great. Okay, so let's go back to Raphael real quick. Okay. Here we go. There he is. So now Raphael, much more polished, right? I went in and inserted spheres in the eyes to polish those eyes, and went in and refined the teeth. So a little bit more work went into this scan because also the side were not there. I removed the knife, so I modeled those individually. Just also for 3D scanning purposes, it needs to, you need to make sure that there's enough thickness for the scan. So that's the other topic that I'm gonna jump onto. So you get the model thickness and scale, right? So at the size of the 3D print, you need to consider how big are the details going to show, right? For example, we have the bandana again. You can tell the bandana, there's a certain level of thickness right here on this edge. Let's say if the bandana was like realistically, if I would realistically sculpt this bandana, it would be much thinner, right? In real life, it wouldn't be like this really thick piece of, cloth. But let's say if I would like sculpt it realistically to proportions, right? Real life proportions, they wouldn't really read that well as a sculpture at the scale that I was going to print, which is it's about 7 to 8 inches tall. So it is important to consider those kinds of elements, right? Also, the weapons, weapons need to be thick. This is very much applied in the miniature industry, where it needs to be very, very, let's say, graphic, in a way that you could see very notable shapes in the sculpture. So and also you need these pieces to be resilient. Like when removing supports, resilient to like impact, or if you're sending this piece on the mail to a client, it needs to be a strong piece, right? If they're very tiny, let's say it's like the size of a toothpick or even smaller, it's most likely it's going to break. So make sure that you have that enough thickness for the piece to be resistant to impact. So there's Vincent, you can follow me. I have a channel, I have a YouTube channel. You can just Jorge Norgard Art, and you can also look me up on Instagram, just Jorge Norgard, and I post a little bit more in depth into my work on my Patreon page, and that's patreon.com/Jorge Norgard. So after considering all these details, right, like the level of thickness, how's it looking graphically, right, how deep these cuts are, right, now we have to jump into keying and cutting. So for example, as you can see, I have, let me put this in color. There's separate colors here, and that means these are separate pieces that are separate. We have cut the keys, the arms, back of the bandana, and the base. So this is all for printing purposes. Also really works well if you're planning on molding or casting or sending this to production. This optimizes the process of 3D printing as well. Let's say if you have a certain size of printer, and you can't really print the whole piece, the entire piece in one batch. Uh, it it really helps to sort of like arrange those pieces into the base of the printing platform of your printer. So as you can see, the base also has its keys, and everything just goes together perfectly smooth. So if we go here, for example, let's go ahead and turn on this cube, live boolean. I'm going to show you. Let's see if I could go here. Aha. I'm going to show you the distance of these keys, because this is also important. Like, the keys are not perfectly fit, like in a way like they're touching surfaces. You need to consider the distance, like a little wiggle room between those keys. So for example, right here in the arm, there's a teeny bit of space between the key and the piece that goes next to it, right? That fits in it, the arm. You could tell right here. See, and as we move this, you could tell that wiggle room, right? If there's no wiggle room, there's a very it's a very big chance they're really not going to fit when you put them together. When you try to like assemble it once you have printed the pieces. So right there by the base as well. So this is a good trick to see how your booleans are working and how your keys are working. It's basically, ZBrush offers this live boolean option, and I have this cube on subtract over here, and it's going to subtract anything that's above that subtool, which subtools are basically the pieces in my project, right? How many models I have in there. So let's go back to the entire crew. There you go. So here's Donatello. So you see all of them are in separate pieces. And let me know if anyone has any questions or anything that we've missed. How are we doing on time? Stephanie and Adam.
So, I saw Ron has asked, can you scan pictures and signs?
Oh, scan pictures. Like for example, like come up with a scan from a 2D image. I don't know. I think the scanner is more for 3D objects, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
right.
Yeah. If it's a sign, like for example, like a traffic sign or like a maybe, I mean, oh, if it's a sign like a like a cylinder with a Yeah, you'll probably get a cylinder in whatever shape that sign is, right?
Yes, exactly.
Mhm, mhm. So,
I'm
yeah,
pretty
it's
sure
not
it
gonna it's
also depends on the material of the surface. If it's refractive, it cannot be captured.
right. And also, I mean, Seal scanner captures texture, right?
Capture the image
Mhm,
on that paper, on the pictures.
mhm.
Using texture mode.
But to be honest, the 3D model you get will be a plain paper, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's say, looks like it's 6:38. We still have 22 minutes. Okay. So let's see what
So
else I
it's
can show you.
different. It depends on how much detail you want to share more.
Mhm.
Do you have more things to share?
Sure. Yeah. Let's discuss more how I did Leo, because Leo, he was particularly more complex due to the swords, and I think it would be nice to show you how I tackled those swords, because the swords were, or actually, sorry, I'm like changing my mind. Let me know if you still want the swords, but I think I'd rather just um, show you how I tackled the base as well, because the base, it wasn't scanned in one shot. This base, it needed to be. Let me go ahead and share GM Studio again. I think it's important. It's an important note. And this is something I noticed and I learned throughout the process. I didn't know, I was just really just learning as I went. And I noticed that when you're scanning flat surfaces, like for example, this base over here, let me go ahead and remove. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay. As I was scanning, I noticed that I would, since the base is relatively flat. I mean, you could tell, like, yeah, there's a little bit of thickness, but I was scanning straight down to the object, and uh, it was very easy to lose track. So be careful when you're scanning these type of objects. Make sure that, for example, these are really good reference points. These are the keys of that clay base, and these cracks. So as you're scanning, pay attention at the details and landmarks of your object, because let's say if you're scanning and you're moving around and you come back and then the object is a little bit flat like this, you might lose track. And you're going to notice when those details and landmarks start to misalign. So the way I did this scan and made it work is that I went in very slowly. I captured with just one stroke from left all the way to right. And I avoided going back, because I noticed, like, when I went back, uh, the edge wasn't really strong enough to hold the alignment, and neither did these. So for the turtles, it was no problem, because the turtles are really straightforward, right? It's a body, but a flat surface like this, um, it had I had a little bit of issues. So which were really like no big deal. I just went in and like did it again. It just took me like probably like 3 tries. Um, so let's go. Let me show you the other scan. So here's the fusion. The vision is not bad at all. It was really, really good. So you can tell it's just a section of the base, right? I really didn't worry about the other ones. So let's go ahead and, I could also show you. Let's go ahead and I have Michelangelo, or let's go ahead and do Samurai, because this was the first scan I ever did, and this was sort of like the first impression I got from the scanner. And the Samurai zombie was a sculpture. It is a sculpture that has a lot of detail, and it's not as matte as the clay sculptures. It has a little bit of reflectivity. It has a little bit of specular aspect to it. So the scanner, I mean, it did really well, surprisingly. So let's go ahead. While this opens, let's open it up to any questions. Do we have any questions?
Have any?
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I do have a question for you
Okay, go ahead. Shoot.
because I've seen you have posted some scans in our Facebook group, and people are really amazed by your scans. But sometimes when you first receive the scanner, they didn't get the result as they expected. So do you have any specific suggestions to our users, like
Mhm.
mentally?
um,
Because they got really upset.
mhm, mhm.
Why I cannot get the scan?
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand how it could be like, oh, it could be frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Um, consider the type of lighting you're using. Consider the type of surface that you're scanning. Consider the speed that you're scanning. How steady your hand is. So these are all multiple factors that you need to consider when doing this, because it could be, yeah, it could be tricky. You know, yeah, I think, and yeah, and patience, patience. If it
Yes.
doesn't come out right the first time, definitely try multiple times. I know there's people that have tried multiple times and don't get the result they want. Um, so yeah, definitely consider all those factors that I mentioned. I think definitely that would help.
Patience and practice are the key.
Yeah.
And another solution is that you can seek for support from 3D Maker Pro, right?
Also, yeah, of course, they'll be there to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay,
awesome.
do
How are
you
we
have
doing?
another project to show us? What
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah, so I'm opening the Samurai Demon that I did. It was the first scan I ever did, and it was very. I was amazed by how good it was. So
Yeah, we
let's
have
see.
seen this scan in our groups.
Yeah, yeah, I was like really excited to share this one.
I
so
can see that.
yes, so it was 30, no, yeah, about 3,100 frames. Um, and it gave me a really just I was just surprised with how good the scan was. Like I really loved all the bumps and details it captured. Um, and this material's resin. It's plastic. It's not clay, so it reflects a little bit. But it still handled it pretty well, which was great. I mean, it even captured you know, the rivets and the detail over here by the helmet. Really nice. A bit of noise. I didn't use remove noise, so remove the noise would probably do a better job at removing all these bits here and there. Um, you can tell that I missed these spots. So yeah, pretty awesome. Okay, well, now that I've shown you this, let's go back. I think we're running a little bit out of time, so let's jump into how I print. I set up the printing for the Ninja Turtles. So I'm gonna go ahead and look up. I'm like, I should have this opened already, but I guess I don't. Okay, there you go. Open the project. So after, oh yeah, let me just go ahead and jump back to ZBrush 1 minute, because it's important to note how I transferred like these ZBrush files to the 3D printing software. Oh, I can see I was already sharing a screen. Okay, it's okay. Share. Let's go down. Oh, okay, there you go. You guys can see it. Okay, great. So after keying and cutting and assembling these pieces, I went in and optimized the geometry. So what is optimizing is it's reducing the amount of polys in a model. So this was by decimating the sculpture itself, which means that you're not only reducing the amount of polys, but you're turning basically everything into triangles. So the polygons are usually 4 vertices, right? They're squares. So let me show you the original one, so you guys can see the difference. So I have, here's Donatello, the original. It's 3 million polygons. That's, if you send that to a 3D printing software, it's probably going to crash, right? It's not gonna handle it well. So with that in mind, just go back to the decimated version, and it's almost 350,000 polys, right? So it's a big jump decimating it. So this is just by going to C plugin and going to decimation master, pre-process current, and then after the process is done, you decimate it. So you could apply the percentage of decimation in your model just by tweaking this slider over here. And then you'd say if you do it at 10 decimation, it's going to reduce it even further. The standard is 20, which is just fine. If it's pieces that need a little bit more decimating, I usually reduce it a little bit more. So then after that is decimated, I go ahead and go C plugin, and I prepare my files for export. And how can I do that? Well, that's pretty easy. Just go to 3D Print Hub. I have my cube here. This cube is not just to demonstrate how I cut the pieces and stuff. This cube, the main reason why I had it is because the scale of this cube, I have it set to 7 inches. So you go to update size ratios. We're selected on the cube. And then this is very like arbitrary. I mean, you could choose inches or millimeters. I'm just going to go here, and then it's going to set the parameters for this cube to be this size. But what's really cool is that I can just go to, let's say I want that cube to be 7 inches, which is pretty much going to be the size where I want these sculptures to kind of be around. I go ahead and type 7, and that will automatically scale everything up to the relative size. And then I go ahead and change it to millimeters, because I know that the 3D print software works in millimeters. So let's say if I export this in inches, when I import it to my 3D print software, it's gonna import it this big. So imagine 7 millimeters, right? It's gonna be super tiny, smaller than your nail. Yeah. So make sure to have that in millimeters, and then export to STL. So the main setting that shows you that you're it's going to export everything to the size of the cube, is because the cube is basically a bounding box. and I'm telling the bounding box to be for all tools, and that is for all the pieces that I have right here. I didn't export all pieces together. I went in and exported just one turtle at a time, including the base. So after I exported, which I just went, where are you? Export STL. I get this window here. Let's go ahead to desktop. And it's ZBrush is going to ask you, hey, how do you want to name them? I usually just use the subtool name as the file name. So I have all those names there, which is really nice because then I know which pieces are which, right? And then that's going to export them. And then now we're going to jump into the 3D printing software, right?